Everything else can stay.
That's crazy. Everybody on there and Rick Fox. Rick Fox?
Yeah, they said Rick Fox was on the plane too.
Rick Fox?
Right.
I know who he is. I'm saying that's the point. What the hell was he doing on there?
Cause you know him and Rick Fox friends, man.
I guess.
Yeah, they.
Damn.
He said they dead.
He said they dead
now. Rick Fox?
Yeah, Rick Fox, they friends, they buddies. You know they played on the same team.
I know. I didn't know they was cool like that.
Yeah,
I know they played on the Lakers together, but
yeah, they cool like that.
Devil's got the time for his lies. All day whole operation, certified priest, prophesy That's my occupation. This shit outrageous. They done made this roof bounce out. That's why we on the corner crying aloud, looking hostile. I.S.U.P.K style. Can't stop now. Father's warfare couldn't last one round. Let the oppressed rise and let the rich mourn till the sundown. Enough with this shit. I'm about to make it hot, cold, and compound. This for my niggas, put the guns and the drugs down. Dwelling in peace till the Lord calls for the blood. Hey, try to decide my death and got beside yourself. Swore drawn for what you perform. How you gon' hide yourself? Devil got to die for his lies and his dreams. Ain't got no love for them crackers. Nah, just cool intentions. And in my father's house is spinning mansions. I got plenty bitches. Run me and bitches. This your death sentence. I'm talking real slaughter. Yeah, slaughter. Yeah, slaughter. Yeah, slaughter. Yeah, slaughter. Yeah, slaughter. Yeah, slaughter. That they do not rise. Go in and feel the world with lies. And die for your skin. You gon' die for your crime. I'm talking to you. So warn for your life. Your life. Try to destroy my people. You gotta pay the price, nigga. You gotta hear, let them hear. Till the devils that they end this deal. Slaughter. Yeah, slaughter. Yeah. Now they shook from vicious words out this handing book. About to take these rappers back to school. My flow said it hook. They crossed the line, ain't no coming back. You became no cowards. The only thing sweet is the honey check. Righteous is the Lord. Give me rest from my sorrow. And hand down death for them devils. There's no tomorrow. Why? Cause they violence leave a man a stiff corpse. You see a flag in the bench. I see horns in a pitchfork. So please believe it. The white man is a demon. And I ain't gon' vote for them to free me. They beat us till we. The color purple is why this knife till they broke like ceiling. You got this nigga on his knees. They wanna have peace. We screaming, let this bitch burn at 1,000 degrees. I'm laying in the bosom of revenge. I told her I'd do anything she please. As I squeeze on the double D's. Fuck you mean? I'm talking real slaughter. Yeah, slaughter. Yeah, slaughter. Yeah, slaughter. Yeah, slaughter. Yeah, slaughter. Yeah, slaughter. That they do not rise. Go in and fill the world with lies. And die for your skin. You gon' die for your crime. I'm talking to you. So warn for your life. Your life. Try to destroy my people. You gotta pay the price, nigga. You gotta hear, let them hear. Till the devils that they end this deal. Slaughter. Yeah, slaughter. Yeah.
The police just shot him for no apparent reason. No reason at all. They asked for license and registration. That's the police officer over there that did it. With the black on. I can't really do shit because they got me handcuffed. I can't believe they just did this. I'm fucking back!
That boy gone, bro. Damn, bro. I wonder what he was thinking when that plane was going down.
I don't want to know.
Test 1, 2. 2, 2, 2.
Oh, shit.
2. All I ever wanted was to be a gangster. All I ever wanted was to be a gangster.
Well, that's he thinking the same thing Cleo.
The Lord said, they should come for a soul. So right now,
They got all this money now. Say, what the hell? Is he right?
All I ever wanted was to be a gangster. Little did I know I was in danger. Decisions that I made provoked the Lord's anger. Prayed to him all the time and I was just a stranger. All I ever wanted was to be a gangster. Little did I know I was in danger. Decisions that I made provoked the Lord's anger. Can't be focused on the life that's hopeless. Out there pumping, not knowing the Lord will kill you for that hocus pocus.
Don't come no further past that light.
Are they on the disc? Are they on the UV? Are they on the?
I got them on drive, and I got them also on
USB?
Why, you want to
Yeah. I saw a slider too.
I'll probably send it to you. I'll probably just go ahead and send it.
How can you send it?
Do your email?
You can?
Yeah, you got your email, right?
Yeah, just send me the slides. Send me your Christian slides. The one that's got the $1 one.
Okay.
The first one you did that says Christianity was meant. Send me all.
Yeah, I just sent it to you. That way you pick what you want out of it.
Yeah, just send me all. Hey, Thabawan, I might have to get your slides too.
No sweat.
You know what I'm saying? If you could,
No sweat.
you know, you great scholars of the truth. You know what I'm saying? You know, I might have to. You know, if y'all could just email me at @gmail.com. You know what I'm saying? And if you have any slides too, brother, you want to slide in. If you have any slides, Mark Docker, you want to, if you have any slides.
You have some slides. Everybody gets some slides.
Anything y'all want to send me, you know what I'm saying, just pass around the email amongst each other. Y'all do a collaborative effort.
Slide.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying, a collaborative effort, if you could.
Are we done right now?
Let's get it. Go for it.
What's up?
Ready? I'll get it back up there.
Oh,
Ready to go.
Right, turn it back on.
Ready?
Oh, it's already on.
Alright.
I'm a while.
Well, we're gonna wait till you do your announcement, then we're gonna hit the light.
All right, Most High in Christ, clap it up again for we're gonna bring up the next priest and officer Thabawan, man, to continue this lecture and finish it out, man. So give it up, give a hand clap, man, for Officer Thabawan.
The water, sir. The water. Most High in Christ.
All right, give my hand.
The water here. The water.
All right.
Before I begin, man, let me just say, the water, and please give a big hand clap for Officer Nataza, man.
Right.
What that brother brought out, man, is so pivotal for us as Black Hispanics and Native Indians, man. I want to just give a shout out to that brother for giving me an opportunity even to be involved in this lecture. He had so much research done and so much work done, and he gave me an opportunity at the last minute to come in here and just help out a little bit. And I appreciate that brother for that. You know what I'm saying? So the water, sir.
Yeah, no sweat.
Come. So for the next leg of the lecture, you know what I mean? What I want to do is just kind of build off of what Officer Nataza brought out, which is already enough that we should, you know what I'm saying? We need to start examining ourselves as Black Hispanics and Indians. We need to start examining ourselves and some of the things that we look at as being beneficial for our communities, being beneficial for our people, even how we interact with one another. You know what I'm saying? So, but I want to build off of what he did and get into a little bit of history and bring it up to today. I'm going to talk about some of the same characters that he talked about, even, you know what I'm saying, mention some of the same facets of Christianity that he talked about, you know what I mean, in order to get us to understand how this device, which is exactly what it is. Christianity is a device that's been used to divide Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Indians.
That's right.
To divide us and to destroy us and to keep us in slavery. You know what I mean? So, with that being said, I know you see some familiar faces up here.
Right.
You know what I mean?
The devil.
Right, the Most High in Christ, the water, so we look like the devil, right? That's who that is. You know what I mean? This is the cat that's on your grandmother's refrigerator right now.
Right.
This is the cat that's on the calendar or whatever's in your grandmother's house. You're very familiar with that. I'm not sure if you know this, but these, according to scholars or what you may know, this is actually not the same person. Don't know if y'all know that. It is and it isn't. What I mean is, scholars will tell you that this is a rendition or a painting of Jesus Christ. This is a painting of Caesar Borgia. Caesar Borgia was the son of a pope, right? Which pope was it, sir? Pope Alexander, right? He was used as basically the model to paint this man. This image has destroyed more blacks, Hispanics, and Native Indians than any disease, than any plague, than anything that has ever faced us in front of our face. Because of this, because of our worshiping this image, we've been destroyed, and we continue to be destroyed. So I just wanted to make sure that I opened my section of the lecture by just, giving him his due credit. His due credit for making sure that we hate each other, for making sure that we love people that look like him.
Right.
Because that's what we do. You understand? So if you can, please, next slide, brother. All right. So now, just to brush up on something Officer Nataza brought out, right? So Christianity is a tool of enslavement.
That's right.
And early on in the American slave trade, Christianity as practiced by whites wasn't taught to slaves, as it was believed that they were not human and thus had no souls worth converting or bringing to God. Furthermore, whites, who owned slaves, were particularly uninterested in teaching the Bible to their slaves.
That's right.
Understanding that the overarching narrative of the Bible is about a race of people who are continually subject to slavery, but being God's chosen people, are saved from their oppression, they believe that it would incite slave rebellion. Officer Nataza brought out earlier about a man we all know by the name of Nat Turner. Now, Nat Turner was, what was, before that rebellion took place, what was Nat Turner? Nat Turner was a slave preacher who was commissioned. He was commissioned to teach or to give sermons to minister to other slaves. So, as a part of that, from a young age, he was actually given access to read the Bible and learn to read, whereas other slaves were not given that opportunity. The only reason it was given to him was because he was being pushed to teach their form of Christianity, right? Ultimately, having been well versed in the Bible, he saw things that his oppressors didn't want him to see. If any of us saw the movie, it shows that he started to say things and read scriptures that he wasn't supposed to read.
That's right.
And that's how he ended up being able to convince or tell the other slaves, listen, it's not our place to be in this situation.
Right.
And ultimately, he was able to gather some fellow, believers and do what he did. Focus on protecting their investments and lifestyle. They knew that the truth of the book would resonate with their slaves and could not risk putting notions of freedom, and racial pride, and divine favor in their minds. See, the Bible is about a group of people, right? A group of people who are free, who have racial pride, and have divine favor. It's about a group of people who are God's chosen. And they didn't want us to read any of that and say, well, could this be talking about us? Could this relate to us? Should we read this and should we look at our master and say, wait a minute, you have us in slavery, but is that what the Bible says we're supposed to be in? So they wanted to keep that from us. But soon they discovered that if they formulated a specific style of the Christian religion, they could simultaneously appear to care about their slaves and make them even more subservient than before. Who's ever heard of Stockholm Syndrome?
Right.
That's a common thing that we bring up. But Stockholm Syndrome is basically the idea that a person who oppresses somebody else, right, in the midst of oppressing them, has to give them small bits of treat them well,
Right.
just in small spurts.
Right.
Because if you treat them well, just enough, they'll forget that you're the person who oppressed them in the first place.
Right. Right.
You'll forget that you're the person who enslaved them in the first place. So that's what happened. Slave masters realized that, wait a minute, we can use this thing and we'll make it our own, and we'll convince them that not only should they be good slaves, but that we're being good masters in the process. Okay? Next slide, please. Right. So this is a quote from the same article that Thabawan brought out. It's the same quote, actually, but it's so prevalent to what we're bringing out. In the early days of slavery, whites did not expose slaves to religion. for a variety of reasons, including the belief that slaves did not need a religion, and the fear that slaves would learn to read and write. Eventually, whites believed that slaves who learned religion would be more subservient. You see the complete shift. At one point, they were afraid. Well, so that means they must have known something about the book, right? They must have known that in that book was something that wasn't going to be beneficial for them. It wasn't until they learned, well, we can tweak it, we can change it, we can alter it to make it benefit us. Eventually, whites believed that slaves who learned religion would be more subservient, and that religion could be a useful tool in maintaining the institution of slavery. White religious leaders strictly controlled blacks' access to religion and cultivated and enlisted black religious leaders to assist in detecting and investigating slave misconduct. That's important. Strictly controlled blacks' access to religion. From the very beginning of us getting religion, it wasn't even our own. Or getting religion as we see in America today. That's right. It wasn't our own. It was something that was, again, cultivated and remixed and done up to suit us for their benefit. That's right. It was given to us by our slave masters. As it says early on, we weren't even exposed to religion in the way that that we're familiar with today. So now, next slide, please. So we're going to go into a little bit of history. I uncovered a few things that I think are important just to show the landscape of religion. The landscape of how you came to be, when I say you, I mean we, Salakia, how we came to be Christians. How we came to believe in the things that we believe in. How it was brought to us. It wasn't a nice organic thing. No, it was brought to us by another people who had an agenda, right? We're going to learn about a major figure in this. This man right here, this devil, Salakia, he was literally cross-eyed. Like, he was actually a cross-eyed man named George Whitefield. And believe it or not, they were so ridiculously stupid back then that some people who were religious believed that him being cross-eyed was a symbol of divine favor. They thought that he was cross-eyed because God loved him so much. And he wanted to make him special. Good night. So George Whitefield was an Anglican clergyman. Anglican meaning English. He was from the UK. An Anglican clergyman and evangelist who was a founder of Methodism and evangelism. Right? He was known as the Great Itinerant, which means circuit rider or traveling preacher. Right? Still got that today. But back in this time, what they would do is the people who were what they call Methodists or evangelists, they would get on a horse-drawn buggy or get on a horse. They come overseas, right? Well, they come overseas, did get on a horse. And then they would travel all around the country. Mind you, the country at this time only consisted of what? This is the mid-18th century, the 1700s. What you got?
13 colonies.
Most High Christ. It consisted of the 13 colonies, which came down from New York or Boston, I believe in Massachusetts, or maybe even Maine. I think, but I'm going to say around that area, right? Around Maine, Boston, Rhode Island, and came down as far as Georgia. It was the original 13 colonies. And he was what was called the Great Itinerant, the Great Traveling Preacher, the Great Circuit Rider. His revivals, anybody familiar with revivals? You ever heard of a revival tent? Right? You get this, that's where they get in the tent, you know what I mean? And they want to liven up the people in the area, and they start preaching, and it's loud and disgusting, and everybody's sweating and falling out. He was doing this 400 years ago, right? Known as the Great Itinerant, his revivals throughout America in the mid-18th century ushered in the Great Awakening. It was the first of 3 intense spikes in religious interest in the Americas. See, despite the fact that the Americas were discovered by people who they say were fleeing religious persecution, a lot of these people didn't even have religion. They weren't even really interested in it. They weren't big in the Catholic Church. They weren't big in the Protestant Church. They were just people trying to find a way in life. So they came to the Americas because it was prime real estate. Y'all know how the oppressor does. Right. Y'all know what he does. He's looking for the land that has the most resources. Don't let your block, we got it going on right here in Durham, right? Don't let your block have too much traffic going on. That's right. Too many things going on. They'll start to say, well, wait a minute, we need to buy up this area. Because that's what they did back then. Right. But this was a preacher during that time. essentially a Church of England reject. They did not assign him a pulpit. So he was in the Anglican church, but they was like, you ain't nobody. Like, you're not giving you a pulpit. You're not even worth it. So what did he do? He preached in parks and fields. He was a charismatic. I want you to listen to this description of him closely. He was a charismatic and loud orator who Benjamin Franklin said might be well heard by more than 30,000. He was loud. He would get out there in the park and scream and holler, and people could hear him miles away. Oh, well, you didn't know this? No doubt a result of his background in the theater. He was an actor. He was an actor when he was in college. And he took everything he learned, all his acting chops and his stage presence, and he took it and became a minister. He had a knack for attracting large crowds with his loud, dramatic performances, charismatic persona, and sometimes controversial rhetoric. He was doing things that nobody else was doing. Right? Read next slide. We're going to see one of the things he was doing that no one else was doing at the time. Whitfield became one of America's first national celebrities due to his theatrics. What does that mean? Again, this is only 13 colonies. This is this bastard right here, Salakia, in front of a nice crowd of his contemporaries. He became a national celebrity. He was like, give me one, Joel Osteen. He was the Joel Osteen of his time. His sermons were so well known that even through word of mouth, everybody in the nation knew who he was. He would go up and down the 13 colonies: New York, Rhode Island, Georgia, Virginia, South Carolina, North Carolina. He would go up and down and minister, right? Because he had such a knack for that theatrics that people gravitated toward it. And considering how black churches are today, you know there's a whole ton of hollering and screaming in there, right? Am I telling you something you don't know? It's not surprising that he was one of, if not the first well-known white preachers to include slaves in his revivals. Like we said earlier, that the brother brought out, it was pretty much looked down upon to teach the Bible to slaves.
That's right.
Like, it's a waste of time. They don't have souls anyway. They're not even human. What are you doing? But not him. He had bigger plans ahead. Quick sidebar. He was also a bit of an innovator in terms of how he got his message out, which is why he became a celebrity. We're all familiar with Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. Well, this man would have been basically a social media celebrity back then. He was one of the first ministers to use the abilities of the printing press to get his message out. He would print sermons, like he would have a sermon and have it written out and put in newspapers and things like that, so that somebody who wasn't even close to him, he might be in Georgia, but somebody in New York could read, George Whitfield had a sermon this week, and it went as such. He was one of the first people to utilize that technology to make his name even bigger, right? Leave it on. Even today, Christian scholars recognize Whitfield as perhaps the most important figure in bringing the gospel to blacks in America. One prominent Christian website, this is on that website today, if y'all need it, I'll give it to you, even describes him as a man who was the most tireless gospel preacher of his era, and who seemed to care a great deal about orphans and African American converts. That's how they describe him. Next slide, please. Right, man, he was so famous and such a big deal that even amongst blacks, slave and free alike, this man was often venerated. The famous poet Phyllis Wheatley, who was the first black woman to publish a book of poetry in America, wrote a poem while she was still a slave, mind you, about Whitfield upon his death. In the poem, she refers to Whitfield as a happy saint and thanks him for his sermons and treatment of blacks. That's what was going on. But a quick sidebar, while this was happening, something else of great importance was taking place. Next slide, please. Did you know some interesting information? We in the deep south. Well, y'all consider this the deep south? This is the deep south? So, we in the deep south, right? This is called the Bible Belt. Am I correct? The Bible Belt. We all know how slavery was in the south. Well, did you know that the province of Georgia, the southernmost of the original 13 British colonies in North America, that would later become the U.S. state of Georgia, had a provision in its original charter that prohibited slavery. Slavery wasn't allowed early on in Georgia. Why so? Because there were farmers there. And the farmers they didn't want to get into that enterprise, right? They didn't want to deal with those things. They thought it would be hazardous to them. Well, guess what? However, in 1751, due to a 2-year campaign, starting in 1748, it was reversed. The campaign was headed by the owner of an orphanage who believed that the lack of slave labor was making his and other businesses in the colony suffer financially. The orphanage was named Bethesda Orphanage. In regards to the slavery ban, right, at the time there was no slaves, weren't allowed to have slave labor. The owner maintained that the constitution of that colony, Georgia, is very bad. And it is impossible for the inhabitants to subsist without the use of slaves. Isn't it so sad? After pushing for 2 years, the owner got his wish in 1751. And with an ever-growing stable of slaves, he was able to gain more land and got his orphanage to grow to where he hoped it would. Isn't that wonderful? But despite the great success, the identity of the owner of that orphanage might shock you. Next slide. Oh, it was George Whitefield. The same one who was a friend to the Negro, right? The same one who was the first to preach to slaves. He was the one who pushed for slavery in Georgia. Right. Next slide, please. He became one of the most vocal defenders of slavery as an institution. So much so that he began to intertwine it with his status as a celebrity preacher and teach that it was the divine will of God for slaves to be in their condition. He began to use the Bible in such a way as to not only justify slavery, but endorse it as how things should be. But as we saw from Phyllis Wheatley writing a poem about him, his surface persona as a friend to the Negroes was already etched in stone. He'd written sermons and other materials where he actually called out other slave owners. He called them out and said, you got to treat your slaves better than this. What's wrong with y'all? Y'all being so mean to these poor souls, right? Salakia. Like black and white preachers of today, he played both sides, comfortably nestling himself in the gray area where he could safely appeal to more people and watch the rewards pour in. Next slide, please. This is a direct quote from this man, right? This is the man that Phyllis Wheatley, a black slave, wrote a poem about, praising. As for the lawfulness of keeping slaves, I have no doubt, since I hear of some that were brought with Abraham's money, and some that were born in his house. I cannot help thinking that some of those servants mentioned by the apostles in their epistles were or had been slaves. It is plain that the Gibeonites were doomed to perpetual slavery. Now check this out. And though liberty is a sweet thing to such as are born free, yet to those who never knew the sweets of it, slavery perhaps may not be so irksome. However this be, it is plain to us a lot. Can you scroll a little bit? No, I'll read it from right here. Don't sweat. However this be, it is plain to a demonstration that hot countries cannot be cultivated without Negroes. You see, your Charlotte, North Carolinas, your Durham, North Carolinas, your New York Cities, Chicago's, this man understood you can't build one of these cities without slaves.
That's right.
You cannot bring in commerce and build your economy without slaves. Right. And so even as a minister, he knew, I got to give you some slaves. By the end of this man's life, he owned about 50 slaves. And he had hundreds of acres of land, which he then gave to a duchess in the UK. And this man is still, on that same Christian website, the writer of that article said, I admire George Whitefield. Still, to this day. Next slide, please. So now, Christianity, the tool of enslavement, right? This is Frederick Douglass. As we all know, it is believed that his father was actually a slave owner, which would make him not one of our people. However, he was an abolitionist. So some of his words, some of the things he said are prevalent to the topic, right? So many were fully aware of how the church and slavery went hand in hand. Former slave Frederick Douglass, who went on to become arguably the most prominent abolitionist and slave-turned statesman in the U.S., expressed this connection between the two on multiple occasions. Quick sidebar. My brother, Officer 5000 Nataza, brought out earlier some facts about Frederick Douglass when it came to snitching. Frederick Douglass was actually known when he would write something, or if he was doing an interview, or if he published a book, he would purposely not tell a direct account of what took place when he got to freedom.
That's right.
He would purposely leave out certain information because if anybody else wanted to escape, he didn't want them to be caught.
Right.
So he would say, I remember one thing I read where it said basically like, I'm going to leave that part out. Like, I'm not going to tell you that because if anybody else wants to take that route, I don't want you to know about it. Right? So now, this is him talking about slavery and religion. I have to inform you that the religion of the southern states at this time is the great supporter, the great sanctioner of the bloody atrocities to which I have referred. While America is printing tracts and Bibles, sending missionaries abroad to convert the heathen, expending her money in various ways for the promotion of the gospel in foreign lands, the slave not only lies forgotten, uncared for, but is trampled underfoot by the very churches of the land. What have we in America? While we have slavery made part of the religion of the land. Yes, the pulpit there stands up as the great defender of this cursed institution, as it is called. You can't have slavery in America without Christianity.
Yeah, right.
You can't have it. It can't grow.
That's right.
It can't be sustained. That's why so many of our people were willing to snitch. That's why you had black informants, right? Because it's beneficial to the system. If you put somebody in the system, you give them a certain place in the system, then they're going to want to do what? They're going to want to see the system survive. Because they don't want to lose their seat. You understand? Next slide, please. Right, even some slaves were able to pick up on the hypocrisy early on. We're going way back, right? In 1774, a group of slaves petitioned the Massachusetts legislature for their freedom, citing discrepancies in what they were being taught and what was actually in the Bible. This quote demonstrates that the religion being pushed on slaves was not meant in any way to make the slave aspire for freedom. Next slide, please. I'm going to try to read this. Now, this is a part of, again, this petition that they sent to the legislator in Massachusetts. Your petitioners apprehend we have in common with all other men a natural right to our freedoms without being deprived of them by our fellow men, as we are a freedom people, a freeborn people, Slakia, and have never forfeited this blessing by any compact or agreement whatever. You see, they tried to do what so many of our other brothers and sisters tried to do, right? They tried to take the governmental route. They tried to take the route where we'll go ahead and write something. I mean, we'll write a petition, or we'll put it on a piece of paper. That gotta make it real, right? I might as well tell you now that this petition did not work. Good night, Salakia. But still, it's prevalent to read. But we were unjustly dragged by the cruel hand of power from our deepest friends, and some of us stolen from the bosoms of our tender parents, and from a populous, pleasant, and plentiful country, and brought hither to be made slaves for life in a Christian land. Thus we are deprived of everything that has the tendency to make life even tolerable. The endearing ties of husband and wife, we are strangers to. And if I may, real quick sidebar, as I read this, please start to understand that what our brothers and sisters went through 300 years ago isn't so much different from what we go through today.
That's right.
It's the same thing. Husbands and wives, right? We got some in the black community, but it's not what it should be. Our relationship to our brothers, the way we treat each other, we do our best sometimes, but it's not what it should be. But I'm going to read on. Salakia. The endearing ties of husband and wife we are strangers to. By our deplorable situation, we are rendered incapable of showing our obedience to Almighty God. How can a slave perform the duties of a husband to a wife, or a parent to his child? Salakia, I'll get to it afterwards. How can a husband leave master and work and cleave to his wife? How can the wife submit themselves to their husbands in all things? This is a slave in 1774 saying this. if you were even able to read the Bible, if you were even able to understand just a little bit of what was there, these are the questions that you would ask. These are the questions that we ask every Saturday at camp. We ask you, well, if you love black people so much, then why are we treated this way? If you believe in the Bible the way you claim you do, then why are we killed in the streets? This brother was asking the same questions. How can the child obey their parents in all things? There's a great number of us sincere members of the Church of Christ because he wanted to go along with the oppressor. But he had these obvious questions. How can the master and the slave be said to fulfill that commandment? Live in love, let brotherly love continue and abound. Bear ye one another's burdens. This is the part that always gets me. How can the master be said to bear my burden when he bears me down with the half chains of slavery and oppression against my will? There's an inherent hypocrisy, right? But it's not hypocrisy. You see, it's very simple. If you believe in the religion of your oppressors, you automatically have to be oppressed. Because your oppressor, what is he praying for every night? He's praying that he gets more money. That he has more of an increase. That he gets more land. We just talked about George Whitefield. He was praying to God that, hey, I need some Negroes so I can grow my orphanage. Right? But you're praying for freedom. You're praying to just be able to break the shackles. Well, there's a conflict of interest there. And so these questions are very prevalent to that. Next slide, please. So now we're going to move on to the ways in which that was able to take place, right? Those are 12 questions that were asked. Who's ever heard of the slave Bible? Really? No sweat? Okay. Well, we're going to get into it right now and break it down. Take a good look. This is an actual copy of this book, right? We're going to read on where it was printed. It was published in 1807, okay? There's 3 known copies in the world. There's 3 of them that are known, that they know where they are. One of which is at Fisk University, and it was, they borrowed it, the museum in Washington, D.C. borrowed it, and they have it on display. I believe they have it on display right now. I'm not too sure, but last I checked, they still have it there. Next slide, please. The Slave Bible, as it has come to be known, was actually titled Parts of the Holy Bible, selected for the use of the Negro slaves in the British West India Islands. As you can see right here, this is not phony. Officer Thabawan did not make this up. This is an actual book, as you can read it. Parts of the Holy Bible selected for the use of the Negro slaves in the British West India Islands. It was published in London, right? You can't see it, but it was published by a company called Law and something else. Salakia, I can't see it. Maybe I can read it right here. Salakia. Right. Law and Gilbert, right? This is an actual artifact. You know what I mean? A primary source. Now, as mentioned before, it was believed by many whites that to teach the Bible to slaves was counterproductive, as it would cause them to rebel. This sentiment never changed exactly, right? It never actually changed. They always looked at it like, oh, this is dangerous. However, mounting pressure from the growing religious sphere of influence made many slave owners at least want to appear to care about the souls of their slaves. But more importantly, thanks to men like Whitefield, it was starting to be understood that a religious message, I don't want to brought this out earlier perfectly, it was starting to be understood that a religious message that was tailor-made to fit for the slave could actually be even more beneficial than neglecting to teach them religion altogether. Next slide. So, the first slave Bible was published in 1807. This is an important date because it's exactly 3 years after the Haitian Revolution ended. The Haitian Revolution, as we all know, was arguably historically the most successful slave rebellion ever.
That's right.
It's the only slave rebellion that basically ended in them overthrowing the government.
That's right.
The only one in history. It can be seen as a response to the only slave revolt to be successful to that magnitude, right? So they published this book specifically in the West Indies, Jamaica, right? Haiti. Right after that took, well, not in Haiti, but Jamaica and the surrounding islands, because it was right after that rebellion. It's unclear who was directly responsible for the edits, but their intention is obvious. According to Anthony Smith, Associate Curator of Bible and Religion in America at the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C., where one of the 3 known copies is held, listen to this. About 90% of the Old Testament is missing, and 50% of the New Testament is missing. Put another way, there are 1,189 chapters in a standard Protestant Bible. This Bible contains only 232. Now, some of you might have heard this myth, right? Who's ever heard this? That's a white man's book. You heard that before? Come. That's a white man's book. That book is, they use that book to enslave us. That's what they say. They use that book to enslave a lot of you the black community, right? So like, what they call them? The conscious community. They say, yo, you don't read that Bible, man. You're gonna put that Bible down. That's what they use. That's like Salakia, a lie. That's a lie. The Bible was not used at all. Contrary to the myth that the Bible was used to enslave black people, the Christianity that was forced upon our ancestors was based on an edited, incomplete remix of scripture that left out so much of the book that all context had been evaporated. There was no context whatsoever. The thing is literally titled Parts of the Bible. Selected. If I select something, that's there. I want that one. That's the one I want. It was selected for what was it selected? For the use of the Negro slaves. That's what it was selected for. It wasn't an actual Bible. You know what I mean? 90% of the Old Testament and 50% of the New Testament. Salakia, if I may, some fake Israelites say, get rid of the New Testament. They use that to enslave you. No, they didn't. They cut out half of it. You know what I mean? Next slide, please. In terms of the omissions, right? This is still the same one, right? This is still the slave Bible. In terms of the omissions, the main purpose was to remove anything that would suggest to a slave that freedom from bondage was something to aspire for. The book of Exodus was cut down to exclude any mention of the Exodus. The Egyptians being tormented by plagues and eventually death as a response, you know what I mean, for their refusal to let God's people go was missing. Scriptures that suggest equality in some way were also left out. The majority of what remained were out of context scriptures that included words such as servants, masters, labor, etc. The slave Bible continued traditions in America that had begun hundreds of years prior with men like George Whitefield. Men who wanted to have a semblance of a conscience but still saw blacks as less than human and only worthy of servitude. Just like in North America when Whitefield arrived trying to preach to slaves, farmers, by the way, farmers in this context means slave owners. If you owned a farm in the South, 9 times out of 10 at this time, you were a slave owner, 1807. Salakia in the West Indies were weary of missionaries teaching the Bible to their slaves. However, the church and the farmers soon saw common interests. Once they understood how they could actually use religion in such a way that they would both benefit, they decided to join forces to make the economy grow right alongside with the church. As Schmidt says, this can be seen as an attempt to appease the planter class, saying, look, we're coming here. We want to help uplift materially these Africans, that's what they called us at this time, right? But we're not going to be teaching them anything that could incite rebellion. Coming in and being able to educate African slaves would prepare them one day for freedom, but all this, at the same time, would not cause them to seek it more aggressively. Next slide, please. Here's some examples of some excerpts, right, that were actually omitted from the slave Bible. If I may, real quick sidebar, not quite a sidebar. Some of y'all grandmothers still got a slave Bible in the house. I know my grandmother does. Right? In my house, I grew up with my grandmother. She had this little white booklet, right? That just said it literally said New Testament and some of the Old Testament. And that's what was in there. Well, here's some of the things that the slave Bible left out. Exodus 21:16. And he that stealeth a man and selleth him, or if he be found in his hand, he shall surely be put to death. Does this sound like a white man's book?
Right.
If it's a white man's book, why would he want to leave parts out?
Right.
You understand? Galatians 3:28. There is neither Jew nor Greek. There is neither bond nor free. There is neither male nor female. For ye are one in Jesus Christ. We are all one in Jesus Christ. Now we know the I.S.U.P.K of the Humanitarian YAHANNA knows the proper breakdown for this scripture, if I may. You understand? But they took that out because they didn't even want them to see words like bond nor free. Neither Jew. Wait a minute now.
Right.
That sounds like we all the same. Just like Christians say today, right? Let me get that up out of there. Jeremiah 22:13. Woe. What does the word woe mean? Y'all U.P.K, right? It means destruction. Woe unto him that buildeth his house by unrighteousness, and his chambers by wrong, that useth his neighbor's service without wages, and giveth him not for his work. That was left out of there. Right? But men like Nat Turner saw these scriptures. You know what I'm saying? Denmark VC, right? Gabriel Prosser. They saw these things and said, oh, I see what's going on. No sweat. Salakia, I'm out. You know what I mean? Next slide, please. Right? So now, we're going to move into the next phase. We got a couple definitions. Officer Thabawan likes to, you know what I'm saying, get into some grammatical things. So, so the word pacifier is a noun. It simply means one that pacifies, right? Next slide. An agent, through definitions, one that acts or exerts power, something that produces or is capable of producing an effect, an active or efficient cause. Chemically or physically or biologically active principle, but this is the one I want. A means or instrument by which a guiding intelligence achieves a result. Keep that in mind. A means or instrument by which a guiding intelligence achieves a result. Next slide. To pacify. To allay the anger or agitation of. To soothe. To appease or propitiate. To restore to a tranquil state. This is the one I like. To reduce to a submissive state. To subdue. Go back to the last slide real quick if I may. So if you are an agent who pacifies, or if pacifying is your job, you are what? You are the means or instrument by which a guiding intelligence achieves a result. Achieves pacifying. Achieves soothing. Next slide. By which a guiding intelligence achieves reducing to a submissive state. Next slide, please. Some slaves, this goes right back to what Officer Nataza so perfectly brought out, right? Some slaves viewed their interests as aligned with their owners. Thus, fidelity to their owners caused some of these slaves to inform. For example, this is another example, right, of black informing. Scipio, the body servant of his owner, revealed a potential uprising in Camden, South Carolina in 1816 in order to save his owner. Scipio was freed as a result of his efforts, but continued to work for his master. Although it is unclear whether he was paid for his work or unpaid. So we don't even know if he started to get paid for it. He might have been like, all right, Scipio, you're free. No, I'm not. So Scipio's story raises the matter of whether domestic slaves were more likely to inform than other slaves because of their proximity to or relationship with their owners. Either proximity or relationship might encourage owner loyalty. Next slide, please. So we're going to start to get into this understanding of the slave preacher as a pacifier, right? Now look at this picture real good. I don't know, y'all can't really see it too well, but I'm going to read it. The actual subscription, right? This is from a newspaper in Hartford, Connecticut, in 1875. It says, a darky prayer meeting for 100 years of progress of the United States. Now, I'm going to show you another picture after this, but this one, if you were to look at it, it's almost supposed to be comical. It's making fun of them. It's not supposed to look glorious or professional, right? It's supposed to make them look wild and silly. It says, this is a quote from a former slave named Charlotte Martin, born a slave in 1854 in Florida. They did a series of interviews in the 30s where they were asking former slaves about their experience as slaves. And this Charlotte Martin said, the plantation owner would not permit them to hold religious meetings or any other kinds of meetings, but they frequently met in secret to conduct religious services. So as we said, we read another slide, right? That when it came to religion, it was heavily monitored and controlled. The reason why this picture is drawn this way is because it's not talking about the church service on Sunday. Right. It's talking about a darky prayer meeting. This is one of the ones where they went off in secret in the woods to talk about things they didn't want the master to see. And that's why they drew it this way. When they were caught. So now again, understand that the Christianity is not, for blacks, Hispanics, and Indians, it's not what it is for the oppressor. Right. For the oppressor, it's a religion. It's a belief system. For you, it's just an ideology that makes you afraid. Right. Makes you scared. It makes you more of a slave. You understand? So what they were teaching was not, it's Christianity for you. You understand? It is Christianity. Don't get it twisted. But it's not what they run their lives with. You understand? When they go to their churches, they're praying for prosperity and for them to be better and for them to get more slaves. And for you to never rebel. They gave you the version that makes that works for them. That's right. It says, when they were caught, the instigators, known or suspected, were severely flogged. Flogged means beaten. Charlotte recalls how her oldest brother was whipped to death for taking part in one of the religious ceremonies. This cruel act halted the secret religious services. So if you were religious and you were a slave, you couldn't do it in secret. You had to be in front of the master, or you had to be a commissioned preacher. You had to be one of the ones that he said, listen, okay, I trust you to go and do this thing. You couldn't do it in secret. Next slide, please. Now look at that one. Look at that. Meeting in the African church. Don't even look, oh, you got a nice shirt on. You understand? Now this is another quote from somebody else, right? Another former slave that they did an interview in the 30s. Harriet Gresham, born a slave in 1938 in South Carolina, right? And she said, a Negro preacher delivered sermons on the plantation. Services being held in the church used by whites after their services on Sunday. Good night. So the same place where the whites would have their service, after theirs was over, here come the slaves. And they'd have a Negro preacher up there. The preacher must always act as a peacemaker and mouthpiece for the master. So they were told to be subservient to their masters in order to enter the kingdom of God. But the slaves held secret meetings and had praying grounds where they met a few at a time to pray for better things. We just read about that. It says, so they were told to be subservient to their masters in order to enter the kingdom of God. That's what men like George Whitefield were teaching. Like, yeah, Christianity is good for you. You should have hope. You should pray, and you should want things to be great and everything. But hold on now. Don't pray. There's nothing. You got to be subservient. You got to serve your masters. What the one they use, Ephesians 6:5, what they use? Obey your earthly masters. Don't know what the hell it means, but they use that one to try to get them to be subservient. Right? And if they held those secret meetings and got caught, they were either killed or beaten damn near to death. So the Negro preacher became a pillar or an image of, we'll just call it what it is, white supremacy. Right. He was an agent. He was a pacifier for the slave community. We'll get to it. Ottawa brought it out perfectly. We got a bunch of them today, right? Creflo, create the flow of dollars. You know what I mean? We don't got Eddie Long no more, most high in Christ. But we got, you know what I mean, John Gray, all these cats who are pacifiers and agents. It's not anything new. Right. They were here before. Look at them. They falling out. They praying and crying and hospital. You know what I'm saying? It's the same thing going on right now. Next slide. Right. So now we're going to move up to the next phase of this. We went from the 1700s with George Whitefield, 1800s with the slave Bible, 1800s with the slave preacher, and now we're going to get up into the 1900s, man. Who's familiar with Michael King Jr.? Who knows who that is? Oh, y'all don't know who that is? Okay, got a couple people. No sweat. Michael King Jr. is better known as Martin Luther King Jr. Right. And the I.S.U.P.K, we got a nice name for him. We call him Orange Mike. That's what we call him. Because we know what that cat was really about, right? Right. So, Salakia Martin Luther King Jr., right? We're going to get into some information about him and how he plays into this. Who has seen these four faces before? Most of y'all are black people. I hope y'all have, right? Right? Addie Mae Collins, Denise McNair, Carol Robertson, Cynthia Wesley. On September 15, 1963, the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama was bombed by 4 members of a local KKK chapter. 15 sticks of dynamite attached to a timing device were planted under the church steps, and at approximately 10:23 a.m., the bomb exploded and killed 4 of the 5 little girls who were changing into their choir robes in the basement. They were pronounced dead at the scene. Salakia, but I just want to make it very clear for you. It was said that their bodies were so horribly damaged, one of the girls was actually decapitated. And they were only able to identify her by her clothes. That's what happened on that day. Well, needless to say, violence proceeded. Black residents were fed up. Some people don't know, but later on in that day, 2 more young black men were killed in the aftermath. They were killed by police. Martin Luther King called the bombing one of the most vicious and tragic crimes ever perpetrated against humanity. However, his first order of business had nothing to do with siding with his people. If I can get that audio, I'm not sure if everyone will be able to hear it. If y'all can be as, I understand this, you know what I mean? The acoustics aren't perfect, but I'm hoping that it'll come out so y'all can hear it. And you can also follow along. It should start coming up here too. Just hear what he says in the aftermath of this event.
We come today representing Birmingham in general, and more specifically, 200 business and professional, religious, and lay leaders who assembled the day after the bombing to discuss the application, discuss the seriousness and the whole crisis that we face there. And we come to you today because we feel that the Birmingham situation is so serious that it threatens not only the life and stability of Birmingham, Alabama, but the whole nation. The image of our nation is involved in the destiny of our nation. We feel that Birmingham has reached a state.
So this man made it his first order of business to go ahead and have a nice sit down and talk with John F. Kennedy and other politicians. And he says, and we come to you today because we feel that the Birmingham situation is so serious that it threatens not only the life and stability of Birmingham, Alabama, but our whole nation. The image of our nation is involved. The image of our nation. Good night. And the destiny of our nation is involved. This man always saw himself as a part of that world more than our world.
That's right.
He always envisioned himself as being part of their world and being some kind of mediator between us and them. He was never interested solely in the uplifting of black people.
That's right.
You understand? As for me and my brothers in the I.S.U.P.K, All I care about is blacks, Hispanics, Native Americans.
That's right.
That's it. You understand? And the I.S.U.P.K stands on that. That's called brotherhood, man.
Right.
When you play both sides, you know what you are? A sellout.
Right.
You're a traitor.
Right.
You're an agent. Most High in Christ, the water, sir. You're an agent. You're a pacifier. You're no different than those who snitched on Gabriel Prosser and Denmark Vesey, you know, and Nat Turner. You're no different than them.
So, like, sir, if
you can please
continue. I'm not sure where you held it on the
It's all. Now, there are many things that we could say that would justify our coming to this conclusion. I'm sure that you're aware of the fact that more bombings of churches and homes have taken place in Birmingham than any city in the United States, and not a one of these bombings over the last 15 to 20 years saw. In fact, there were some 28 have taken place in the last 8 or 10 years, and all of these bombings remain unsolved. There's still great problems with police brutality. And all of this came out in tragic dimension Sunday when bombing took place and 4 young girls were killed instantly. Then later in the day, 2 more. I think both were boys. 2 were killed. Now the real problem that we face is this. The Negro community is about to reach a breaking point. And there's a great deal of frustration, despair, and confusion. And there's this feeling of being alone and not being protected. If you walk the street, you're unsafe. If you stay at home, you're unsafe. If you're in church now, you're unsafe. So that the Negro feels that everywhere he goes, if he remains stationary, he's in danger of some physical problem.
If I may yet again, notice the rhetoric here. If we were to go up, you'll see that he says there's a great deal of frustration, despair, and confusion in the Negro community. He says it again, so that the Negro feels the problem for those who find themselves in leadership positions, right? He consistently says the Negro community. Not one time does he say our community.
That's right.
Never.
Yeah, right.
But when he was talking about America, he said our nation, our country. He doesn't say we're at a boiling point. There's not a great deal of frustration and despair and confusion in our community. It's with the Negroes. It's with them. You understand? So he got a couple more things he's going to say. There's one more thing I really want to get to. It's not very long, and it should be coming up real soon. But play that again, sir.
What? This presents a real problem for those of us who find ourselves in leadership positions, because we are preaching at every moment the philosophy and the method of nonviolence. And I think that I can say without fear of successful contradiction that we have been consistent in standing up for nonviolence at every point. And even with Sunday and Monday developments, we tended to be firm at this point. But more and more we're facing the problem of our people saying what's the use. And we find it a little more difficult to get over nonviolence. And I am convinced that if something isn't there to give the Negro a new sense of hope and a sense of protection, there is a danger that we will face and then which race riot we will see. I think it's just at that point. I don't think it will happen if we can do something to save the situation. But I do think that I was as well as those who we met there today, that some
hope y'all hear this, man. I'm gonna back it up a little bit. Salakia.
Oh, you want to go back to the audio?
Yeah, only because I want to read something. So you can actually click on it. Yeah, you scroll up. Right? There we go. That's cool. I want to talk about this part right here. Again, the same rhetoric. I'm saying we and our. And he mentions that he's standing firm on nonviolence. We have been consistent in standing up for nonviolence at every point. And even with Sundays and Mondays developments, we continue to be firm at this point. But more and more, we are facing a problem of our people saying, what's the use? We find it a little more difficult to get over nonviolence to them. Now, I.S.U.P.K, we're not telling anybody to go out and knock, heathens upside the head. You know what I'm saying? But this man, if I may, and I am convinced that if something isn't done to give the Negro a new sense of hope and a sense of protection, there is a danger that we will face, and that will lead to the worst race rioting we've ever seen in this country. I think it's just at that point. But this is the part I want to get to. I don't think it will happen if we can do something to save the situation. Save the situation. Go back to the last slide, please. Or go back to the slide, the actual slide. I know this is the website. Save the situation. 4 little girls killed. It wasn't a secret. Like, it wasn't like, who did it? It was known. I believe, like, one of them was, like, on, like, across the street. And they caught him right then and there. It was pretty much known that the KKK had committed this atrocity. You know what I mean? The 5th little girl of the 4, she wasn't killed, but so much glass had gone through her body that she actually was blinded in one eye. A shard of glass had gone through her eye. 22 people were injured. People down the street said they felt the aftershock of it. One of those people who was down the street ended up being yet another, you could say, slave preacher, informant, whatever you want to call it, named Condoleezza Rice. Her father's church was down the block, right? But in the aftermath of this, Martin Luther King's job was to calm the Negroes down so he can save his country.
That's right.
You understand? And that's always been the job of the slave preacher, to make sure either you're going to inform when something is in the mix or on the rise, or you're going to let it be known ahead of time. Because not all slave insurrections were halted afterwards. Some were destroyed before they even got a chance to take place. What y'all doing tonight? Oh, y'all meeting up in the... Okay, I'll be there. Okay, so we're going to meet up and we're going to do this. Okay, no sweat. Yeah, I'll meet y'all 6 a.m. on the dot. All right, Master Charlie, they doing this, they doing that, everybody gets hung in the story. But that's been taking place since the 1700s. And your favorite person, MLK, is just another in that line. He's in that tradition.
That's right.
He's nothing but a pacifier. Right. So when you're angry about atrocities like 4 little girls being killed under the steps of a church, he'll calm you down. He'll pacify you. He'll put you in a tranquil state. Next slide, please. Here's more information. We all know about Rosa Parks, right? Everybody know what Rosa Parks is? We know what Rosa Parks did and back of the bus and all of this. We know that Martin Luther King played a role in that. Well, here's what happened. Maybe y'all didn't know this part. Here's an actual picture of the event. On January 30th, 1956, Dr. King's home was bombed. But unfortunately, his wife and their baby daughter escaped without injury. Continuing for 381 days, this quote right here just burns me up. But listen to this. Martin Luther King guided the protesters to remain nonviolent, stating, "We must learn to hate with love." I mean, I could get, what's the one I read yesterday? I can't. What's that? The time for hate? Right? He said we must learn to hate with love. How do you do that? How do you hate with love? Good name. Right. It sounds so gay. So we must learn to hate with love. All right. Finally, on November 13, 1956, the Supreme Court stepped in and declared the Alabama bus laws illegal. On December 20th, so this is right after he got his wish. Let's not forget that it was a black woman who couldn't sit at the front of the bus who started this whole thing. On December 20th, federal injunctions were served on the city and bus company officials forcing them to allow the Supreme Court's ruling. The following morning, December 21st, 1956, Dr. King and Reverend Glenn Smiley, a white minister, shared the front seat of a public bus. That dude can already sit on the front of the bus. What the hell is the point of this? He can already do that. So why would MLK make it his business to sit next to Reverend Glenn Smiley? Because his whole mission from the beginning was never about making you, better, about making you realize your worth, about making you not be a slave. It's about bringing you closer to him, just like he wanted to be. Closer to people like Glenn Smiley. That was his mission from the beginning. Next slide, please. We got some more. King's integrationist and pacifist agenda and the subsequent veneration he received by the U.S. government echo as the single greatest triumph of the slave masters' collective efforts to destroy any desire for freedom in the lives of those they hold captive. Every slave Bible, every black slave informant, from George Whitefield and his hypocritical evangelist crusade, to slave preachers tasked by their owners to deliver a hodgepodge message of hope and servitude, MLK and his image are the culmination of all these things, multiplied 10 times over. Here's him with a bunch of his friends. LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson, right? That's after they signed that civil rights law, right? That's what he always viewed himself. This man was a superstar. Next slide. Oh, man. Don't worry, we're not done with Orgy Mike's Lockett, MLK. I just had to bring this out. It relates. Who knows who this woman is? All right, if you don't know who this woman is, this is Margaret Sanger. She was an American birth control activist and sex educator who opened the first birth control clinic in the United States in 1916. In 1921, she reorganized the clinic into the American Birth Control League, which, until the 1960s, operated as the only birth control organization in the country. After 20 years of operation, with over 200 facilities and having served nearly 50,000 clients, they sought to gain more traction by adjusting their image and reputation as anti-family by changing the name of the organization. After connecting with a group called the Citizens Committee for Planned Parenthood in 1938, the ABCL found the name more family-friendly. In 1942, they officially changed their name to Planned Parenthood. Today, Planned Parenthood is the largest single provider of abortions in the United States. Next slide. Now, we got some abortion rates here. This is interesting. Now, as you can see, abortion rates seem to be going down. But as you should also see, the abortion rates for black people has, even at its lowest, is damn near triple what it's been for whites. Blacks and Hispanics constitute almost 40%, they constitute 40%, almost 50%. Almost 50% of all abortions in the United States. Next slide, please. Today, more than 28% of all black pregnancies end in induced abortion. What does that mean? That means if you get 4 black women in a room, and all of them are pregnant or will get pregnant, one of them is going to get an abortion, according to statistics. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, abortion kills more black people than HIV, homicide, diabetes, accident, cancer, and heart disease combined. In 2014, African American women comprised 13.3% of the U.S. population, but black women had 36% of all abortions. Next slide, please. This is a letter that she sent to basically the doctor who was running Planned Parenthood. He was an overseer at Planned Parenthood. His name was Dr. Gamble, right? This is an actual copy of the letter, right? Where she's basically talking to him about what things we can do to make it better and get it to where we want it to go. So I'm going to read it from the top. There's only one thing that I would like to be in touch with, and that is the Negro Project of the South, which, if the execution of the details remain in Miss Rose's hands, my suggestions will not be confusing because she knows the way my mind works. Miss Rose sent me a copy of your letter of December 5th, and I note that you doubt it worthwhile to employ a full-time Negro position. It seems to me, from my experience, while I have been in North Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, and Texas, that while the colored Negroes have great respect for white doctors, they can get closer to their own members and more or less lay their cards on the table, which means their ignorance, superstitions, and doubts. The Negro Project, if I may sidebar, the Negro Project was basically a mission by Margaret Sanger and her corporation to get more clinics in black neighborhoods. Because at that time, a lot of physicians were really weary. The segregation thing, they didn't want to go to the hood. They didn't want to go to them southern places and do, no, we do our thing over here. No. She wanted to see, just like George Whitfield in his goddamn orphanage, she wanted to see her company, Planned Parenthood, it wasn't named that at the time, but she wanted to see her clinic grow. So she knew that there was prime real estate in the Negro community, right? They do not do this with the white people. And if we can train the Negro doctor at the clinic, he can go among them with enthusiasm and with knowledge, which I believe will have far-reaching results among the colored people. His work, in my opinion, should be entirely with the Negro profession and the nurse, hospital, social workers, as well as the county's white doctors. His success will depend upon his personality and his training by us. But she wasn't done. Now, a doctor at a clinic makes sense, right? But there's somebody else she felt was of equal importance. The minister's work is also important. And also, he should be trained, perhaps by the Federation, as to our ideals and the goal that we hope to reach.
Right.
We do not want word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population. And the minister is the man who can straighten out that idea if it ever occurs to any of their more rebellious members.
Right.
See, Margaret Sanger was well versed in early America, and she knew the minister's place. She knew what he could do. She knew he was a pacifier, an agent. The minister is the one who's going to straighten it out if it ever occurs to any of the more rebellious members. This lecture is called Christianity, or Rebellion versus Christianity. We understand full well that there are two things that just don't coexist. Christianity destroys rebellion in blacks, Hispanics, and Native Indians.
That's right.
And she didn't want anybody to rebel against the idea that they wanted to exterminate us.
Right.
And so she had to make sure she got some ministers to help her out. I might as well tell you right now, in 1960, I want to say 66, 4 men were given an award from Planned Parenthood. One of them was Lyndon Baines Johnson. Another of them, I think, was Dr. Gamble. There was one more person I can't think of right now, but the fourth person was none other than Martin Luther King. He was one of the first recipients of the Margaret Sanger Award. And in an article, in an interview, he said that he believed that Margaret Sanger's, she was a hero because her ideals aligned with the civil rights movement. Good night. So now we see what they were all about. Next slide, please. Now we're going to bring Christianity to today, right? So, as you can see, right, it says roughly 8 and 10, 79% of African Americans self-identify as Christian, as do 7 and 10 whites and 77% of Latinos, according to Pew Research Center's 2014 Religious Landscape Study. This is actually from an article that says top 5, things you didn't know about African Americans and religion. It says most black Christians, about half of all African Americans, are associated with historically black Protestant churches, according to the study. Smaller shares of African Americans identify with evangelical Protestantism, Catholicism, and mainland Protestantism. right? So these are the numbers. Hispanics and blacks, much more than whites. Next slide, please. Here's another one. African Americans are more religious than whites and Latinos, right? But as you can see, Latinos actually are over whites in a lot of these as well, right? By many measures of religious commitment. For instance, 3/4 of black Americans say religion is very important in their lives, compared with smaller shares of whites and Hispanics. African Americans also are more likely to attend services at least once a week. Black Americans, 83%, are more likely to say they believe in God with absolute certainty than whites and Latinos. I had to bring out this scripture. For I bear them record that they have a zeal of God. Isn't it obvious? There's a reason why we believe in God more than other people. There's a reason why it resonates in us to even go to church in the first place, to open the Bible, but not according to knowledge. For they, being ignorant of God's righteousness and going about to establish their own righteousness, have not submitted themselves unto the righteousness of God. See, the problem is we got a zeal of God, but not according to knowledge.
That's right.
We don't want to hear what the Bible says. We don't want to hear the law, statutes, and commandments.
That's right.
I'm saying we want to go to the place where it feels good.
That's right.
We want to go to the same place where the slave, because we didn't want to hear the truth of our condition. We wanted to hear the hopeful sermon. That there's something coming, something better is on its way. And we still believe that today. Next slide, please. Right? Here's another one. Black millennials are more religious than other millennials. Even young black people. They say that, oh, our religious numbers are going down. Everyone is leaving Christianity. No, they ain't. Black millennials are still more religious than other millennials. Here's older blacks and younger blacks right here. It's going down, but it's not reaching that. It's not reaching other ones. Next slide, because this is the one I want, I think. This is the one I really want. Right? Here's a quote. In other instances from the same study, the patterns are more mixed. While black millennials are more likely to believe in heaven than our non-black millennials, they are no less likely than older blacks to hold this belief. Now, wait a minute. That's interesting. Isn't it ironic? Despite claims that Christianity is losing steam with younger generations of blacks, the numbers show that belief in heaven has not changed. The dream of an afterlife free of hard bondage that was sold to slaves to make their current conditions seem appropriate and tolerable is still held by their young descendants.
Right.
Look at it. And all the other ones, they're not close together. These beliefs are changing. But belief in heaven, and this is the Christian belief in heaven. This ain't the I.S.U.P.K telling you what really heaven is, right? But the Christian belief in heaven, it hasn't changed. They still think the same thing. They're still waiting to go to the afterlife and see Caesar Borgia. Good night. Next slide, please. Hope. A desire accompanied by expectation of or belief in fulfillment. Someone or something in which hopes are centered. Something desired for. If y'all are paying attention to MLK's words, we actually played the audio. He said the Negro needs hope. We have to be able to give them hope.
Right, exactly.
Oh, well, we got it in 2008, right? In 2012. We got it. That was his campaign slogan. Y'all know that's not a black man, right? Do y'all not know that? That's a Hamite. But that burning desire for better that was in the mind of every slave holds the key to the hearts of black people today. All you need is a message of hope. In 2008, Salakia, this man got 95% of the black vote. 95%. 4 years later, he got 93% of the black vote. Between 2008 and 2012, did he do anything for black people? In 2012 and 2016, did he do anything for black people? If this man could run for president tomorrow, I promise you, he's getting 92% of the black vote. All because of this word, hope. Because we look at him and, oh man, he represents hope. We waited so long for this. Look at that definition. Trust and reliance. We've trusted and relied in America. And we've been doing it since since the 1600s. And that's why some of our people decided to become black informers. They were trying to get that reward. They trust and rely, well, if I tell, then I might get free.
That's right.
If I tell, then I'm going to get favor. You understand? Next slide, please. So in conclusion, right? History has shown that those slaves who chose to rebel received punishment. Those who chose freedom over oppression were either killed or tormented. In the case of black informing, the reason it was such a consistent and successful enterprise was because the benefits were immediate. For self-preservation, it made sense. So finally, if caring enough for black people to refuse to rat them out or teach them something contrary to what the master proposed was enough to get you punished, and snitching and keeping blacks in line was enough to get you rewarded, even to the point of being freed, then being the biggest snitch and the greatest pacifier would get you, next slide, it'll get you a goddamn statue in Washington, D.C.
That's right.
You understand? You don't get this for loving black people. You get what Nat Turner got. You get turned into what? Wagon grease? You get turned into relics and get your body parts dismembered and given to little kids, in other words, who watch you get tormented to death. That's what you get as a result. You certainly don't get a statue in their nation's capital. Next slide, please. Slide 2. You want to do it? Okay. So all we should have learned from this lecture is this information that the willingness to fight for freedom is an honorable play, but that there are a number of Christian-originated vile and traitorous acts of disloyalty that has conditioned us to be an enemy to one another. Matthew chapter 12, verse 25 says, "Every kingdom divided against itself shall not stand." And that concludes our lecture for today. So the water, so you want to say something real fast? The water, sir.
Hey, I'm the water. Get the lights.
Get the lights.
Yeah.
I'll give it up for them again. You turn it on. At this time, that concludes the lecture. But is there anybody who have any questions or any comments, any statements they may have had from the lecture? You can ask it now. What you got, bro?
Is it all right to look at all Christians as being like house niggas? Is that cool?
So, what's your question again? Say it one more time.
Is it okay to look at Christians in general as house niggas?
So he asked, this is his question. He says, is it in general, should you look at all Christians as house niggas? Or is that what you said? That's what you asked? Kind of. Because Christians are disloyal, man. And they don't have the sense of loyalty. They don't have the truth. You know what I'm saying? So with that being said, it's like you can't like I can trust my brothers hearing the truth. Why? Because we all believe and understand the same thing. Right? But when a Christian does not have a sense of loyalty, they don't have the truth. So you have to look at them as somebody. You have to look at them the same as a heathen or as a white man, because they don't have a sense of loyalty. They'll betray you just like any heathen would. Right? So that would be a wise thing to do. Understand? Is that was your only question? Did I answer your question?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Is anybody else? Any other questions? Sis?
Slakia, I had a comment. So when Officer Nataza was speaking about the difference between a house slave and a field slave, I think that has a lot to do with the origin of like the light skin versus dark skin thing as far as beautiful or popular. A lot of light skinned people get a lot more attention or whatever throughout society today. I was just wondering if that could be like an origin for that from like that idea that the house slave was prettier and better than the field slave.
That definitely could have absolutely been like a psychology also that was implemented to keep the house slaves from dealing with the field slaves. Like so in other words, like so in other words, whatever kept the division of house slaves from the field slaves, whatever you had to implement or had to tell them, hey, you much prettier than them, don't mess with them, don't deal with them, they're nothing. You know, they're even if they put them against each other by telling them that they'll betray you, you know, or vice versa, and whatever it took pretty much to keep them separate or divided, then that's what they would do. So even in this day and time, they use those same type of psychologies to basically keep us divided. So yeah, that would also be something that stems from that time also. Go ahead, the question. Good. Oh, go ahead. Yes.
This is if you could, so that we all be on the same page, could you elaborate on the origin of the name of O.G. Mike?
Okay, well, it's actually very simple. If you can Google this.
You just repeat his question, so.
Oh, Salaki. So, what was the question again?
The question is, could you elaborate or could you give us the origin of the nickname O.G. Mike?
Okay, so first things first. His question was, can I elaborate on the name O.G. Mike? Okay. The name of the U.P.K. we use for Martin Luther King you're talking about, correct? Well, first things first. That's a bit of an inside joke because we understand, for one, while everyone else calls him Martin Luther King, if you Google it right now, that name is not on his birth certificate. It's not there because that's not his name. He was born Michael King Jr. It was the same name as his father. He was a junior. His father's name was also Michael King. His father was also a preacher and minister. His father would travel to other countries, and after encountering some things and learning about Martin Luther, right, who was the leader or the person who caused the Protestant Reformation, he was inspired by that and he changed his name. So then he also wanted his son's name to reflect the name he had changed his name to. So it wasn't until many years later, you could even read accounts where Martin Luther King said out of his own mouth that all his life he was Michael. But later on, his father started to refer to him as Martin Luther King Jr. So then he started to do the same, he adopted it, and he started to call himself that name. Now, as far as the orgy Salakia part, we understand because we've done the research and we have seen enough credible evidence that shows that Martin Luther King's crusade to join with the oppressor, as much as he wanted to say it was about, equality and egalitarianism, was actually because he really had a fetish for being in sexual encounters with Caucasian women, right? This is known. He also was a known womanizer. Even his right-hand man, who was a homosexual named Bayard Rustin, right, understood that this man would go to hotels, right, and sleep with prostitutes. He was a sexual deviant. And so we decided to go and take all of his personalities and put them together and give him an appropriate name, which is Orgy Mike. The water.
I was kind of inquiring more so about the difference because there's a lot of differences where does religion have anything to do with the separation of blacks and Hispanics and Native Indians?
Okay, so basically the question is, does religion, play a part or a role in separating us from our brothers, from the blacks and the Hispanics and Native American Indians?
I guess the short answer is yes. I mean, amongst blacks, Hispanics, Native, amongst black people generally, there's division because of Christianity. Right. So if it's going to be division amongst us, just amongst the Negroes, of course, it's going to teach us to be separate or teach us to be. It's going to cause division between us and all of our other tribes also. So yes, Christianity causes division between even us and Latinos. The same thing. You want to get that?
If I may just piggyback off that, like what the brother was saying was that even if you look at the information we brought out today, one of the major components of it was self-preservation. And in order, there's another part that I brought out where the writer, Andre Dennis, basically said that they would find something to latch themselves onto the oppressor, the slave master. They find something to cause or to have a relationship with them as such that they would identify more with the slave master than with another slave. Like Adawan brought out, even in the case of a house slave is going to identify more with his master than a field slave because he sleeps where? In the house. Because he's used to certain comforts. You think he's going to want to identify with these poor black people who live in this way? No, I'm going to identify with you and stay next to you, like a Stephen and Django, you know what I mean? So it's no different with that than it is with the other tribes. Anything that a person could use to identify more with the master than with other slaves, they'll use. The Hispanic's going to say what? Well, at least I'm not like those black people. At least I don't look like them. At least I don't have anything to not say, damn, we're in the same situation. We're in the same plight. We're the same people. So it's just the same thing. They're going to latch on to something to make that division. Christianity causes that. It causes you to be, your number one concern to be self-preservation and not the truth. You know what I mean? Does that answer your question? So,
We have any other questions? All right.
All right, so for the audience and the listeners, what you're saying is Christianity is garbage. So now, what's step two? What do you offer? What do you recommend to the people out here finding out that their Christianity is garbage?
So the brother is asking, I'll reiterate it. The brother is asking, what is we take away Christianity because Christianity have, of course, destroyed blacks, Hispanics, and Native American Indians. What do we replace Christianity with?
So to answer your question, we replace Christianity. If Christianity, the name of this lecture again is Revolution versus Christianity. And if revolution is the idea or the desire to no longer be a slave, if Christianity is about not being a brother, it's about hating your brother so you can be rich, then we're going to go against that and we're going to find the truth according to the Bible. We're going to throw away the slave Bible, the parts of the Bible. We're going to throw away the Christian dogma, and we're going to go to the place that has the truth for blacks, Hispanics, Native Indians. Long story short, we're going to go to the I.S.U.P.K. under Commander General YAHANNA.
That's right.
We're going to go and get into the class. We're going to watch the online classes. And we're going to watch and watch and watch until we start to see that, wait a minute, this is the truth. This is talking about us. This is the real reality of who we are, where we come from, and why we've gone through what we've gone through. The Christianity we were served, as you've seen, gave us no answers. All it did was give us more work and more hatred for one another. So now we're going to go to the opposite place and get the truth according to the Bible. You understand? Does that answer your question, sir? Come.
So, what would you say to the Christian that, understands the knowledge, they acknowledge it, but then they say, well, this is what I was, raised up on, so I'm going to stick with that.
I'm gonna keep it 100. I'm a straight shooter. Thabawan, he'll go into the whole breakdown. I'm a straight shooter. That's how I talk. So how would you tell a Christian? Hey, for me, the way I do it is I'm no sweat. Right? There's no sweat. Because it's not for everybody. The truth is not for everybody. There's only certain people who can make it in this truth, and it's y'all right here. That's right. You know what I'm saying? If a Christian can't hear you, or not trying to hear the truth, then you just have to. There's nothing else you can do about that. You just, Lord willing, just pray for them. I mean, that's all you can do. Right. You know what I'm saying? So if you want to, no, that's it. I mean, that's it. That's it.
Let the wicked stay wicked.
That's right. That's right.
Let the righteous stay righteous.
Right.
Understand? We got any other questions? Any other comments? Any other statements? No sweat. We can give it up one more time for these pieces. Like I said in the beginning, they put a lot of work in this, man. If you was caught any of this lecture, man, and I'm sure you, like me, you definitely learned something that you'll never learn going into the Christian church, man.
That's right.
You understand? It was very influential, man. And the water to both of these brothers, man, for that work that y'all put in. You understand? And we gonna close this out with this, if y'all may hear me out. When y'all take these classes, you understand, you take these lectures and the work and the information that these brothers is bringing out, you understand, don't take it for granted. A lot of us is in the truth, but some of us is still in the world. You understand? Take this knowledge that they're giving to you and apply it out there. Take this knowledge that you got in here and take it to your Christian pastor. You understand? See what he says about these slides that you was just shown today. You understand? See how he can stand up to that. And you understand? And bring it back. And on the other, because other than that, how can you really say that you love the Most High if you're not even willing to take that information out, you understand, and test it against what we've been taught for 400 years? You understand? And like we said, like the brother brought out about Nat Turner, you understand, we're going to close out with this. Nat Turner read the same book, the same Bible that we've been reading in that Christian church for 400 years. Nat Turner loved his people. Nat Turner would kill and die for his people. If Nat Turner, you understand, would have had righteous leadership, Nat Turner would have been one West.
That's right.
You understand? And that's it. And with that, we're going to be blessed with that. Shalom.
Don't forget the time, sister.
Oh, Salakia. How could I forget about that? We got to give a big up to the sisters, man. Give a hand up for the food they prepared. And the brothers are coming out, man. Everybody coming out. Thabawan, man in the computer. Mardaki, the man in the slides, man. Big Oh, yeah, Officer Rock, of course. Captain I.S.U.P.K, big up to you.
Commander General YAHANNA.
Salakia and Commander General YAHANNA, Most High in Christ. And with that, you understand, I'm going to say Shalom. Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shah Barakatah to the brothers. Yahweh Shem Allah Thabawan Shem Yahweh Shah to the sisters. You understand? Shalom.